One thing you gotta know about the so-called science magazines, science rags, science articles, especially on the topic of health, is that they are actually canned experiments. You can't call them experiments because where's the control? You have to understand that peer review is a closed system. That's why independent research is frowned upon. They don't want real people to do things. Liars always cover their other friends. Liars always have each other covered. You know the phrase honor among thieves. Honor, sure. But it's been kind of well known but not very well talked about that articles that downplay the negative effects of obesity and articles that say that fast food and high fructose corn syrup and sugar are not really all that bad are actually bought and paid for by companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola, for example, but other big fast food, junk food companies will pay for these supposed groups of scientists to have a conclusion and then tailor a so-called experiment around it to prove the conclusion that obesity is not that bad, that sugar is not that bad, that trans fats are not that bad, that high fructose corn syrup is not that bad. And that was actually a pretty big thing being talked about in the early 2000s. Of course, I don't think that's really being talked about very much today. Things get memory hold. The Mandela Effect is really about things being memory hold. It's named for when Nelson Mandela suddenly, supposedly had two different deaths, but so did Osama bin Laden. I remember the first time Osama bin Laden's death was reported on the news, and the shills will tell you, oh, it's because the past changed. But what's an easier explanation? Did the past change? Or is all news written like a fictional story, and sometimes there's a hiccup in the narrative or a continuity error? Which one makes more sense? You don't need to have the past change. It's not necessary. Of course, that has nothing to do with those weird little alternate universe stories, but that ain't what I'm talking about. So, a lot of science-y health, nutrition stuff is paid for by junk food companies. And here's another one that was kind of a thing in, I think, the late 2000s. Time sure does fly. Maybe the early 2010s. Time is just flying by like nothing. There's a buzz that touching receipts would make you fat. Do you remember that? Do people talk about that today? And on that note, throughout the ages, I remember these so-called articles about how there would be this new technology coming out of Japan, like some hologram box or something that would cast out holograms all over the place. But where did that go? It was a hoax. Didn't exist. And Boston Dynamics, or the Honda humanoid robot, that was just an actor in a suit. And as for Boston Dynamics, their robots are nothing but CGI. Take a look at the videos. Just search Boston Dynamics, Big Dog, or whatever else, and maybe the big dog physically existed, but not the stories you tell about it are just made up. Maybe that thing was physically real, but it's not viable. You'll never see that thing again. And there's a clearly CGI video of some robot jumping around. It was so obvious. And do you remember those robot pet toy gimmick things from the late 90s to early 2000s, like Furby and these robot cats and dogs and Aibo and stuff like that? Those things aren't very popular nowadays. Oh, and on that note, science fiction media about outer space seemed to be more popular in the 60s and 70s, and today it's just kind of a forced meme, just saying. I wasn't really around for all the major popularity stuff, but I would see piles of media from certain decades, and it looked like certain themes were pushed more in certain decades than they are today. Just a thought. I think I'm forgetting something, but I'll come back when I remember it. Oh yeah, I remembered. There was this kind of a buzz about some robotic mule based on the big dog that could eat human corpses. Ooh, how spooky and scary. Yeah, where's that thing now? I thought there was gonna be like a quadruped robot making scary noises and stomping around eating dead people. I'll let you know if I see one.